מלא רחמים, שוכן במרומים. המצא מנוחה נכונה על כנפי השכינה, במעלן כנושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את כל הנשמות של 6 מיליוני היהודים חללי השואה, שנהרגו, שנשחטו, שנשרפו ושנספו על קידוש השם בידי המרצחים הגרמנים ועוזריהם משאר העמים. לכן ברחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם, אשר נחלתם בגן עדן תמנוחתם, ויעמדו לגורלם לקץ הימים. ונאמר
יזכור אלוהים נשמות הקדושים והטהורים שהומתו ושנהרגו ושנשחטו ושנשרפו ושנטבעו ושנחנקו על קידוש השם. בעבור שבלי נדר ניתן צדקה בעד הזכרת נשמותיהם. בשכר זה תהיינה נפשותיהם צרורות בצרור החיים עם נשמות אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, שרה, רבקה, רחל ולאה, ועם שאר הצדיקים וצדקניות שבגן עדן, ונאמר אמן.
וידקדש שמי רבה בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליא מלאכותי ויעצמר פוקנה ויקרב ומשיחי בחייכון וביומכון ובחי דכל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן הקריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם עולמי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה בריחו לילה מן כל ביחתה שירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה ויאמרו אמן. יהי של הרב משמיה חיים ושבע וישועה ונחמה ושזבה רפואה וגאולה וסליחה וכפרה ורבע והצלה לנו ולכל עמו ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו וברחמיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל, ואמרו אמן.
We remember the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust. The Holocaust Center and Museum in Jerusalem, Israel titled Yad Vashem, literally means a memorial and a name. Inspired from the verse in the book of Isaiah, it places importance on the idea of a place to commemorate all the victims of the Holocaust. This is our responsibility, to have a monument to all the victims and to remember their names. We remember an industrial mass murder of the Jews, 1/3 of our people, a deliberate plan executed by Nazi Germany to eradicate the Jewish identity. The worst crime ever committed by human beings against other human beings. The famous Primo Levi, survivor of Auschwitz, described it in his book. Auschwitz is outside of us, but it is all around us, in the air. The plague has died away, but the infection still lingers, and it would be foolish to deny it. Rejection of human solidarity, obtuse of cynical indifference to the suffering of others, abdication of the intellect and of moral sense to the principle of authority, and above all, at the root of everything, a sweeping tide of cowardice, a colossal cowardice which masks itself as warring virtue, love of country, and faith in an idea. However, did the spirit of evil disappear completely? Did it? I am not so sure. In the past years, we witnessed the rise of anti-Semitism, racism, and xenophobia. We also witnessed anti-Semitism cloaked as criticism against the state of Israel. We know the truth. We are a people that memory and remembrance are part of our culture, part of our DNA. It is not that each one of us can really remember events that occurred along our history, but we are geared for the act of remembrance, same as we read the Haggadah of Pesach 2 weeks ago. In us remembering the 6 millions, we honor them, we respect their lives, and we emphasize that we have overcame the Holocaust to establish a new independent homeland for our people. This homeland, the State of Israel, which the 6 million did not survive to witness and to be proud of. We need to make sure that Israel and Jewish centers around the world are indeed a source of pride. All Agoim, if you wish. But what are the lessons of the Holocaust, of the Shoah? We need to vow collectively, loud and clear, never again, Lord. To achieve that, we make sure that the State of Israel will flourish and forever be a safe haven for the Jewish people, strong enough to protect and deter. But never again requires also a perseverance in educating the next generation. Education that emphasizes human rights and respect to all. For if we fail in this, the ugly history and the evil of the past might repeat itself in the various forms of viciousness and deadly manifestation. Am Yisrael Chai.
Good evening from southern Poland, where we're on perhaps the most infamous site in Europe, the former Nazi death camp at Auschwitz. World leaders joined survivors here to keep alive the memory of the victims. 6 million people, mostly Jewish, were murdered by the Nazis, more than 1 million of them in this camp. Well, 75 years ago today, the Soviet army liberated Auschwitz, and it came to symbolise the horror of the Nazi regime. Today's ceremony had at its heart the survivors, who urged the world never to forget the suffering here. Our World Affairs editor John Simpson was watching.
Each anniversary there are fewer survivors, yet even after 75 years there are still thousands of them left. Soon after dawn today, Igor Malitsky, prisoner number 188005, took part in a ceremony at the wall where tens of thousands were shot. Nowadays, Auschwitz is protected and restored, so the world won't forget the terrible things that happened here. The infamous gateway to Auschwitz was covered over with a vast awning to protect the guests from the bitter cold of southern Poland. Royalty, world politicians, though no British ministers among them, religious leaders, but above all, the survivors themselves. Many proudly wore the blue and white stripes of the pyjamas which the Auschwitz inmates were forced to wear. Rows upon rows of seemingly unremarkable elderly people who are among the last living witnesses of unimaginable cruelty, the worst crime in human history, here in this great factory of death.
In Auschwitz-Birkenau, I remember naked women driven in trucks from the barracks to the gas chamber. I can hear them screaming. I can hear it in my subconscious when I remember those events.
As another speaker noted, nothing was done to stop the slaughter.
Maybe I would like to cry, because only with tears I can tell you about this past. I hope you will all try to preserve the memory of this place and other sites where innocent people died. I hope you'll bear this responsibility so that this terrible thing will never happen again.
There were thousands of Nazi concentration camps, but Auschwitz was by far the worst. 1.3 million people were brought here, and 1.1 million of them died. The plan was to use industrial methods to wipe out the Jewish people. Understandably, many ex-prisoners are reluctant to come back. Among them, Chaya Frisch, who lives in Israel. She was sent to Auschwitz from Hungary at the age of 20 with her parents and sister. Now, though, she's decided she's got to show her daughter what it was like. With 70 others, she was jammed into a railway truck like this for 3 days with no food or water. Her mother and sister survived with her. Her father was sent directly to the gas chamber.
Her father, they took her father. He said that the father was the not right side, and that's it. They didn't see him anymore.
Tonight, after the gathering at the Auschwitz gateway, the guests went out and walked along the railway line, where Dr. Joseph Mengele, the so-called Angel of Death, had once decided which of the new arrivals should live or die. They placed candles up the monument. This terrible death camp was planned to wipe out the Jewish people. It failed utterly. John Simpson, BBC News, Auschwitz.
Well, among those who did manage to survive their time at Auschwitz was Anita Lasker-Walfish, who's now 94. She arrived here fearing the worst, but she escaped death by saying that she was a musician and, in this place of mass murder, torture and starvation, was signed up to play in the women's orchestra. I went to speak to the woman who came to be known as the cellist of Auschwitz at her home in North London.
There's a funny picture of me sitting on the floor with a children's broom and a comb, and I was scraping that thing, and I think my parents must have seen that and said, I think she wants to play the cello.
Anita Lasker-Walfish arrived in Auschwitz in 1943, fearing she was destined for the gas chamber.
Prisoners sit and do the work, shaving your head and tattooing a number on your arm. So this girl asked me, where do you come from and what did you do before the war? And like an idiot, I said, well, I used to play the cello. She said, fantastic, you'll be saved. Our job was every morning to sit at the gate and play marches for all the workers who worked out into the factory. And in the evening we had to go again, sit outside the camp, play marches again for the people who came back. And we survived like we knew very well, as long as they want music, we will exist. The cello saved my life.
How on earth did you endure that environment?
You lived from one day to the other. Today I'm alive, tomorrow probably not. So that's what life was. Very, very short notice. Yeah.
After the horrors of the war, her love of music dominated her life. She helped found the English Chamber Orchestra, trying to put the past behind her. What has been the effect on your life afterwards of being a survivor?
Well, I think I have never lost my sense of appreciation that I am alive and I have a house and I have enough food. And yeah, I've never lost being grateful somehow and appreciate what I've got.
But the trauma didn't end. Her daughter Maya says she's been profoundly affected by being the child of a Holocaust survivor.
Without a doubt, I absorbed unconsciously all of the trauma that my mother tried so hard to contain. So my parents, my mother, really could not understand why, and this is absolutely literal, if I wasn't about to be killed, and if I wasn't starving, what was my problem?
Have you ever been bitter?
I'm not bitter. I'm sad that really nothing seems to have changed. People kill each other as we are speaking now. Why? Why?
Well, there was the extraordinary Anita Lasker-Wallfisch there. Well, 3/4 of a century has passed since this camp was liberated, but there remains inevitably an eerie, haunting chill to this place. Many of the old buildings are still here, including those where so many met their deaths. Today's event is possibly the last major gathering of the survivors. Last time, 5 years ago, there were 300 who came. This time, just over 200. Their message, in a world where anti-Semitism is on the rise, the monstrous crimes committed here must never be forgotten. And with that, it's back to you, Clive.
Rita, thank you. Rita Chakrabarti there, live in southern Poland.
I light this candle in memory and to commemorate the 6 million Jews, thousands of communities, towns and villages that were uprooted and vanished and disappeared forever.
A candle in memory and to commemorate the spiritual and creative people who perished in the Holocaust, and with them also their art.
A candle in memory of the thousands of yeshivot, rabbinical institutions, the rabbis and their followers, who were uprooted and disappeared off the face of Europe.
A candle in memory to commemorate the righteous among the nations, who risked their lives to save the Jews among them.
A candle in memory and to commemorate the last descendants who survived the horrors of the Holocaust and died in the war for the establishment of the State of Israel.
A one candle for a memory of 1.5 million souls under 12 years of age that never returned.
Some years ago I was walking down the street in Tel Aviv. I saw an old man, he was sweeping the streets. His eyes were filled with grace, his body was all broken. A special light was shining from his face. I approached him and said, Shalom Aleichem. He replied as in the shtetl, Aleichem Shulam. I continued in Yiddish, Mein Zisi, sweet brother Jew, would you tell me, where are you from? When he said I'm from Piaseczna, it was like a bomb went off inside me. Never had I met a survivor from that town. As a child, did you ever see Rebbe Klonimus Kalman, I asked. Of course, he said, one doesn't forget his childhood Rebbe. When I was 11, I got to Auschwitz. They thought I was 17 and sent me to the labor camps. Now I've got no one, I am alone in this world. He went on sweeping the streets. Promise me you'll remember this forever. The greatest thing in the whole wide world is to do someone else a favor. I told him, my friend, I heard so much of Rebbe Kalman. Can you tell me some Torah wisdom you learned from him? He looked at me and said, do you really think after Auschwitz there is something that we still can remember? And how can I ever describe how beautifully we welcomed the Shabbat? We danced and danced, all the children around the Rebbe. Oh yes, there's one thing I do remember. He used to tell us again and again, I'll remember this for the rest of my life. He said, promise me you'll remember this forever. The greatest thing in the whole wide world is to do someone else a favor. The greatest thing in the whole wide world is to do someone else a favor. Camps, when I realized my whole family was gone in flames, it was a dark night. I thought to put my life to an end. Then I heard the Rebbe's voice echoing in my ears, remember, do a favor for someone else. Do you know how many favors you can do at night in Auschwitz? Broken people all around, then more arrive. I sat all night listening, giving them empathy and love. I guess that's how I survived. Kinderlach, children, oh sweet precious Kinderlach. Promise me you'll remember this forever. The greatest thing in the whole wide world is to do someone else a favor. The greatest thing in the whole wide world is to do someone else favor. Even to this day, sometimes I feel my life has no purpose. I go into the sea, his voice comes in my ears. Kinderlach, remember, the greatest thing in the world. You know how much good the world needs today. Kinderlach, children, oh sweet precious Kinderlach. Promise me you'll remember this forever. The greatest thing in the whole wide world is to do someone else a favor. The greatest thing in the whole wide world is to do someone else a favor.
I, Oded Milstein, son of Shraga Milstein, and Eliza Stern of blessed memory would like to tell you my short story, one of many of the resurrection of the Jewish people after the Holocaust of World War II. My late mother, Eliza of blessed memory, daughter of Gisela and Joseph Stern of blessed memory, of Borisov, Poland, was left orphaned after her parents were shot dead in 1942 at the age of 9. Her helper had taken her to a Christian orphanage in which she had been brought up by nuns in a monastery, only to be collected by her elder brother against her will in 1945 after the war had ended. She was left with very little family, with which today all of the descendants are Goyim. I would like to tell you a small tale of light. After the war, she had 2 cousins who survived the war by posing as Christian dancers in a German officers' club. The elder had been saved by a Polish officer who fell in love with her and had asked her hand in marriage after the war, with one condition: to convert to Christianity and to promise to never ever mention her Jewish past. The younger sister had then migrated to America and had lived a Jewish life. She recently passed away, and unfortunately, her only son had also died. The eldest sister, Irka, has a son, a daughter, who migrated as well to the United States. The daughter has 3 boys, living and practicing a Christian lifestyle with no knowledge of their Jewish background. Their eldest son, Thomas, when he was 13, started learning to play the violin. As he was a very good pupil, he was taken to a very great teacher, one of the pupils of Isaac Stern, who had heard him play the violin and had asked him, "Do you have any Jewish blood? As your playing of the violin sounds as if you're Jewish." Of course, and alarmed, he had asked both his parents and all of his grandparents if they were any Jewish origins in the family. As a practicing Christian, they of course mentioned that they don't have any Jewish origin in their family. He had then started learning Hebrew by himself and affiliating himself with a Jewish community while living in redneck America in a Christian surroundings. 13 years ago, as the Polish officer had passed away, the younger sister in America had forced her sister to tell her children and grandchildren of their Jewish heritage. Thomas, the eldest of the sons, has since then visited Israel twice, at both of my sons' bar mitzvahs, Ben and Dan, and even participated in the ceremony. As our rabbi had said, if the grandmother was Jewish, hence the mother is Jewish, and he is also Jewish, b'cheskat tinok shenishba. My father, Shraga, son of Hillel and Rivka Milstein of blessed memory of Piotrków of Poland, was in the first Jewish ghetto in Poland established in September 1st, 1939. Instead of starting his first grade, he had switched from free and comfortable life to being closed in a room and forced into 6 years of fear, hunger, and physical endurance and difficulty. He was in a labor camp, in 2 concentration camps, and at the age of 11, while in Buchenwald camp, his father had given him a hug and had told him that he would never see him again. He had left him some breadcrumbs and a bunch of family photos, as you see, and had asked him to take care of his 8-year-old brother. He had told them that night to remember their names and that they had family living in Palestine. The following day, he had learned his father had been killed in Buchenwald camp. My brother was born on December 15th of 1958 and was named after my grandfather Hillel. My cousin Hilela was born on 15th of December 1960, was also named after my late grandfather Hillel. My father had spent years trying to find out what had happened to his father. 70 years later, he visited Buchenwald camp to find out that his father had been killed on December 15th, 1943. Talk of Gilgul Neshamot. My father finished the war in Bergen-Belsen in unbelievable hardship, where there were no executions, but people had died there from severe hunger, cold, and ailment. He had learned his mother, Rivka of blessed memory, had passed away only weeks after her release from Bergen-Belsen, like many others who could not cope with food after years of starvation. My father today is the chairman of Masua, the Institute of Holocaust Studies in Israel, and was honored just 3 months ago in telling his story to the United Nations General Assembly on January 27, 2020, commemorating the 75th anniversary of the Holocaust. Am Israel Chai.